Hello, my lovely, inspiring human potential community, and happy Valentine's Day. Happy Love Day, particularly Unconditional Love Day. In this Universal Love Energy transmission session, we will be clearing and unwinding and uncharging emotional and mental patterns around love. We'll be taking a look at our opportunity to do this in a 5D self-empowered enlightened way. As you can note, I'm actually going to share right now. We have the Caterpillar pillar opportunity as our Shaman's Dream Oracle card, and the energy of the Caterpillar appears heralding a time of transformation and opportunity. So it's transformation, opportunity, independence from conditioned responses. This is one of the main reasons I picked it, but also because if you look at it, it makes me feel at least of love in that soft and compassionate way. The pink colors, the flowers, and the entire energy of this card, plus the 4, which is family, foundation. It reminds me the 4 of Wands, the happy family card, and or even for twin flames. So there's a lot of symbolism and meaning behind a number and a card, and so it's really magical. I have to say, the person who drew this, which is Alberto Villaldo and Colette Baron-Reed, really did a lot. That energy of opportunity is really present, and the conditioned responses around love, which I was talking about with the Food for Thought episode. Anybody who's a regular listener and or community member, there's a Food for Thought episode on love. And welcome to my lovely podcast listeners who you're still tuning in. We're going to tie back to what we were just closing out with, but I wanted to take the chance to do this intro and to get the card also in the way of description and out of, not out of the way, but the viewers are looking at it and you can already embrace that energy, and now you know it's the opportunity for you to transform your relationship with love, especially these conditioned responses that are not serving our higher infinite human consciousness potential. Because when we're unwinding, uncharging, and clearing anything of an emotional mental pattern throughout our universal love energy transmission sessions, it is to support your inner harmony, your inner growth, that constant mindset journey and lifestyle approach that supports your accessing the infinite higher human consciousness potential you hold, because you are tuned into your own heart, in your own body, and in your own mind. And the frequency that you are emitting, that vibration, which is through sensations and emotions. That's why the body element is so important. Our nervous system and actual brain. The map of consciousness was developed by Dr. David R. Hawkins with the kinesiology, with our body. I forget what exactly the science of the definition of kinesiology, but if you look it up, it's from the gist of it, what I recall, the measurement of muscles. And so those hertz connected to shame, guilt, all the feelings that are also something we understand when we understand our body's defense mechanism. And let's take a look if I can quickly find the infographic on those hertz, because since we are talking about love, I'd love to share with anybody who hasn't come across this beautiful graph, the measurement, if you will, of hertz. Because I know enlightenment is, here it is, enlightenment is frequency of 700 to 1,000. Love is the frequency of 500. So imagine as you consistently access your enlightenment consciousness, thanks to pursuing inner growth and this approach that we are always talking about, and so navigating life in a 700 to 1,000 frequency, which is what the 5D light worker, grid worker is actually consistently already doing. Those are the other self-empowered, enlightened individuals who are communicating similar messages and sharing how we can and always have been able to choose unconditional love. There are reasons why we haven't. This is what we talked about a little bit in the Food for Thought with neutrality. So the enlightened person is neutral towards our species expansion / evolution, because there's a clear understanding that consciousness consistently expands. We are conscious beings. We have primary and secondary consciousness, and we live day to day. So let us transform love to always an opportunity. This is where it is also when, and primarily when, there is the absence of love, that you have the opportunity to bring about this transformation. So your frequency can achieve a 5D state and beyond in enlightenment. And that is one of the main goals, and why I will always share some food for thought also in our universal love energy transmissions that connect to the body element, so to our psyche, our psychoeducation. That prefrontal cortex axis is most important and necessary if we're going to physiologically be in compassion, which the compassion training experts, they have their machines and are always looking at once they're helping somebody, or not always perhaps, but the parts of the brain that light up, it involves the prefrontal cortex and us in our parasympathetic nervous system, that ventral state. And that leads me to connect to what I was trying to find for you regular listeners. The exercise by Deb Danin was about our feedback loop can be in curiosity as you allow yourself to stay engaged in that ventral state. And so engage in a sense of ease, knowing you're safe. Obviously, the breathing, rhythmic breathing, is what helps. As you consistently look to information and to your experiences with curiosity, so you explore your emotions, explore why you're upset, why you're sad, instead of making a statement. You get to walk yourself through an emotion and an experience, and not build a neural network that holds you, one, in a negative storyline, but also the body doesn't stay in this confined, constricted emotion. And really it's a feeling, because your nervous system is in defense mode versus the ventral state. Ventral state is when we're safe, so you're at ease. There's nothing to defend from. And this allows you to have the oxytocin and all the love hormones that, again, the compassion training experts shared is what happens when we're in our parasympathetic nervous system and our brain is actively in this state of compassion. So your prefrontal cortex, which for the community that talks about chakras is your third eye, and your brain is your crown. Well, guess what? It is when you're in a state of ease that you have access and are open and receptive. And on that note, as we practice unwinding, uncharging, conditioned responses, but we really want to also acknowledge your emotions. So it's to understand that the conditioned response isn't a bad thing. It is part of our human mammalian heritage. It's part of a societal construct that exists and has gone through its own development for its own reasons. We are not born knowing everything. We learn, and that counts for us as individuals from when we were a child to now adults, and that counts for our entire species and all the years that life form has been. The evil Knievel medieval narrative is a narrative that comes due to the lack of knowledge in many areas that we still do have lack of knowledge. Our lovely sciences are the ones who, with their empirical data, but they need time to build that data, are able to give us feedback of what they uncover. Obviously they're not interested in all topics, and so we have a lot of different areas where we have holes, and there are those who are skeptical and in a place of fear and upset, and we're not going to get into that, but here's where we're at. This is that expansion of consciousness, and I'm supporting those who want to fill the gaps of fear with unconditional love, with your higher infinite human consciousness, which means you'll be able to listen to all sides and do something valuable for whatever that specific theme your heart calls you to in your lifetime. And as we are always supporting each other, it will always lead back to us being able to contribute to the entire human species expanding 5D and beyond consciousness, enlightenment, and so forth. So with this universal love transmission session, I would like you to start unwinding, right? So bring your shoulders down. Let's open up the chest. Let's rhythmically breathe. That's the 5 seconds inhaling, because that's activating our sympathetic nervous system. Then when we're exhaling, 6 seconds at the very least. Rhythmically is important. Obviously, as you're tuning in right now, maybe you don't want to do that. You can do it at a later date or later time. Once this is done, you take there's plenty of videos that give you like even just 5 minutes of this rhythmic breathing. If you want to bring your awareness from your mind to your heart, that helps you to also consistently start that mind-heart coherence. And if you breathe through your heart, this is also what activates that. Now, the rhythmic breathing, when we're breathing out, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system. And also when we are rhythmically breathing, we are activating a somatic exercise. And this is where we are activating our isula, that's the gateway to compassion, and we're down-regulating our amygdala. Now, the amygdala is the second part of the brain that lights up for our body to be in physiological compassion, because that's our threat center. So it means our awareness has honed in on something we care about. The next part of the brain that lights up is the temporal junction, and here's where we relate to an event because we've either experienced it and or we're relating to it in one way, shape, or form. We get it, and that's also where you understand the feeling, but it's also where you could fuse with that feeling, and that means staying in a place of suffering, which is what tends to take place when a person doesn't walk themselves through that emotion. And so using a narrative, because at that moment you're also in your hippocampus, if I remember the word of that part correctly, and you're remembering events and or you're having thoughts, memories, and at that point it's tolerable if there's sadness or anything like that going on. Obviously, you're not usually contemplating the wondrousness when magic happens. You're contemplating when that's not the case, right? This is why we, again, unwind, uncharge, and work through emotional and mental patterns around topics so that you can access your inner growth opportunity, which is about bringing unconditional love. It's about pure love. Pure love has no conditions. It's unbound. As Sadhguru's quote goes, love for most people means do what I want. And he says, no, love means they can do what they want and we still love them. It's a concept that the 5D self-empowered enlightened person has embraced their entire life and or is embracing. And this means to love all and to understand that where we do have hurt, there's reasons, and we can take actions peacefully, harmoniously. And when I say peacefully, I mean in an uncharged state. I mean as functional adults who are using their prefrontal cortex to speak and listen, who are observing, not reacting, and then listening and trying to negotiate with each other. Since there's 7 billion of us in different countries and different systems, of course it's not going to be simple, quote unquote, but it is very doable if we have more functional adult emotional people. So this is where pure love, unconditional love, and being able to achieve your highest infinite human consciousness and potential is if you are going to disengage from the conditioned responses with love, which would be when hurt arises, you do not tend to the hurt, but you react with it. Not good or bad. And react with it doesn't mean you react towards someone. It can mean you store it within you. Having shared this, it is always in an effort to support bringing about the expanded and fulfilled version of you, your true self, which is from within you, and which some people don't actually know yet because they are living life based on the external's standards. Once you begin acknowledging what those standards are, why they're important to you, and you begin asking yourself, do I really want to live my life this way? Does this feel fulfilling from the heart of me? Or am I conducting this relationship or these things and or X, Y, and Z because I was taught it, I was told it, I'm being forced to, or I think I'm forced to? Nobody has to stay in any one relationship. We are not in the medieval times anymore. Even though people like to say that, they actually don't take action. There are people that I know who are in relationships that they've explicitly made clear to me they're not wanting to be in, where I say, well, then you're an adult. I mean, you can leave. The ones who are married talk about finances or, other things. The ones who are not talk about stuff that really doesn't even make any sense, if you ask me, because we're in the 21st century. So again, but this is where societal norms exist. So those people have not become aware that their true self is not wanting to be there. And their mind self, if you will, is conforming and thinking there's a limit because, well, society, again, if you break the law, you're going to go to jail. That's true prison. But when a person's choosing their own prison, which is most of the time, and it has a reason, mammalian heritage. Let's talk about, again, why we're unwinding emotional and mental patterns. The nervous system, there's an attachment defensive state. You want to belong. This is how we would survive in the middle of the forest and or jungle. Our lovely psychologists, the ones that I'm learning from, share these pieces of information. There are answers to why you do what you do. And it has nothing to do with the storylines that you think of in a critical way or a punishing way or a judging way. It actually has everything to do with us loving and wanting to help each other and belonging to each other as a species, okay? So let us, again, move from conditioned responses and understand it's not about disengaging from what you were taught, but it is about becoming aware, and then through your own prefrontal cortex, thinking about the emotion, what you want, what is it that you exactly want. And so again, if you are in a relationship you don't like, if you're in a job you don't like, if you feel there's an emotional sadness, there's stuff in love, there's plenty of people I know that every Valentine's Day they do two things. Some say it shouldn't exist. I love every holiday personally, but that's because every holiday is a reminder to people of how to be able and be grateful for life, and then it's up to them to consistently do that every day. And so then there are those who say we shouldn't have a holiday, we should always celebrate it, right? And there are those who love it. And then there are those who remember they're alone, because people think of love only with partners. And so they're now thinking of them being alone. There's many different ways people have sadness on this day, as well as criticism on this day. And all of those are conditioned responses, which are not what love is. Love is a pure emotion, the same way any emotion is when you break it down to the essence of it, and then you start actually taking a look at all of the components that are part of it, the conditions, and realizing that, guess what? Those conditions are thought forms. You can adhere to them, you can break free from them. They're thought forms. There are no actual prison, bars that are keeping you stuck. You're never, in fact, stuck. You're consciously choosing a thought form alongside an emotional form. So once again, we're going to allow the unwinding, uncharging to be what it is. It's you being able to start taking awareness of those emotional and mental patterns that don't get you to live the life that you want to actually live from the true self. The self that is the child you with the innocence that still can and does exist, very much so. Because although we did understand as we got older that you don't get everything you want, and then most adults stay in their little adaptive child emotional self, this is not a bad thing. It's where we don't explore again those emotional sadness, because we say we're being a realist, or we're being this, or we're being that. And then they're living this invisible prison cell of life, and slapping a label and saying life is not pretty, love is not pretty. The ones who, for example, are sad because they don't have a Valentine, they're not aware that they're not directing love towards themselves, and really they're also disregarding their loved ones, family, friends, people who are part of their life. But really what's going on is the feeling of rejection, which is why it goes back to self-love and unconditional love and true self-worth, meaning the ability to love who you are as you are, and have a sigh of relief of sorts of, I exist and no, there's no perfection. And to smile, even with that, it's not even bittersweet, because see, that doesn't give the true 5D self-empowered expression. What it is I really do enjoy unconditional love, and love meeting, right, those people that have that 100% match vibration, which there are. And those days, guess who's at the center of it? Guess who keeps the love alive? The love is a feeling that comes, and then you're the one who maintains it. The 5D self-empowered enlightened person maintains a state of enlightenment, not based on a rule book. It's an actual feeling of bliss that they do in every day. And it doesn't mean they don't experience other emotions, FYI. So, allowing yourself to be you, the true self of you, is about you being able to bring forth the innocence that was when you were a child, and recognizing those patterns that are in sadness can be let go of. It's your choosing. It doesn't mean you disregard them when they surface. It means you tend to them when they surface. I'm sad because my friend doesn't want to be friends with me, and you tend to it. I'm sad because that person that I loved didn't love me. And you allow yourself to bring your own worth, your own love, and peace to it. It's a constant that you choose. And those who, again, complain and or have the mixed emotions, all of the groups I mentioned, to me, they're not actually paying attention to what they could do to make that day better. And really, they're, placing a judgment. So the ones who say we should love every day don't love their neighbor every day, and people that they're labeling in any way, shape, or form something not good. They consistently live different types of emotions in the absence of regarding the statement they just made about Valentine's Day. Then there are those who, again, enjoy it and love it, and they don't consistently bring it to all. They just bring it to a certain group of people, for example. It all varies, and it's not good or bad. It's about the ownership, the awareness that you can take if you want, and then you choosing, again, if you want to consistently vibe in love and beyond. And here's where, for those who do access, this is where you become your transformational leader in your life and in others. So, as an energy healer during this session, I will be channeling universal love energy through me into you. For those who are open and receptive to this universal love energy, which is always sent for your highest and best good, that will be channeled again through me into you. Give your consent. You can state out loud or in your mind, yes. And for those who don't, just say no. It's an intelligence. It already knows anyways, but this is that process, that procedure. Okay? I'm now connected to those of you who have said yes. Remember, guys, calm, right? Let's be in that calm space for a bit. Clear the mind for a minute. Focus in on your heart. And do remember that abundance grows where energy flows. And if you are going to use your energy to explain yourself to people, you are taking away from your life and from time that you could be spending on the things you love, the people who will unconditionally love you and already do unconditionally love you, who help you to expand and pursue your higher infinite human potential. Those people who do not have conditions for you, but those who actually talk about conditions with you, if you will, and expand together and be curious in ventral state. We expand together when we're curious about each other and when we love each other with our vices and virtues. And when we can do this with our entire human species and focus on how can we bridge the gaps, how can we help people to come to harmony instead of choose a side that you want to be charged in or not. We get to be the functional adults who learn new skills and who really are the negotiators and the observers, because we can see the hurt on both sides. We can see the social patterns, the mental patterns on both sides. And so we bridge the gap because we see both and we don't judge. This is the 5D and beyond. This is the oneness, since we are all part of each other. So let us unwind, uncharge anything that you don't love about yourself, first of all. Anything that you shame, blame, criticize, hold against yourself. I want you to think about whatever that is and however many of those items there are. We won't do a lengthy, I'm going to try not to, make it too long because I know you guys have time limits. I can't promise you anything because every time I say this, you guys know that they've been getting longer and longer, but I will try. What I'm trying to get at is right now we'll look at some obviously together, but keep on going with this exercise, revisit it or do it on your own. What are those things you don't love about yourself? And please bring love. Bring love, first of all, to those items. And I would like you to allow yourself to answer why. Why don't you love these things about yourself? Like, what is it? What is it that is unlovable? Obviously, if you acknowledge that these traits, they hurt somebody's feelings, right? Because sometimes they're traits that we do. Perfect example. I know people that aren't very communicative and are consistently present, right? And in certain forms, they've learned how to share that with people. And even though they have, obviously they'll meet people that take it the wrong way. I've had that personal experience happen as well. And the reality is that's a condition, right? So those who take it the wrong way, they will have a way to say, this is why you're wrong and why I'm feeling that you not consistently being present means you don't love me, you're not here, you're not there. Those are conditions. And that creates suffering, right? And here's where those are two groups of people that are incompatible. So like my personal experience, that's exactly how I pointed out to the individual, like, this is an incompatibility. I can't give you what you're asking for. They disagreed, but this is that part. There's either a ability to unconditionally love each other or there's not. Communication is a constant when there is. Otherwise, there's a breakdown. And so I'm giving you an example of something that is usually involving our heartbreaks. There's misunderstandings, miscommunication, but really it's about differences, different ways of doing things, different ways of thinking things, and it is in those building of relationships, those conditions. For the unconditionally loving person, like I don't have conditions. There's only one condition, if anything. I'd like transparency and honesty. And I say I'd like because here's something that we all know. People don't like being vulnerable. And that's fair because, to be vulnerable means you're going to trust. So most people aren't in a safe space with humanity. And so they have all the narratives against each other. So transparency is something that you find from a 5D and beyond self-empowered person who is also enlightened. Complete transparency. Otherwise, they're not aware of their true self, and so they're not aware of their vulnerability, which means there's not an awareness of the ego self when it's hurt, and that observation is very important, which is why we're looking at these again. So you being able to identify what you don't love about you is important because you want to, love it. So let's keep bringing that love. We want to acknowledge what is also taking place because we coexist. The societal aspect is important. And your attachment defensive state is there. So not belonging and not being accepted for who you are is going to hurt. Same way that other individual or individuals who are telling you they don't like that behavior, they're already hurt as well. Hurt doesn't lead to love though. Conditions don't lead to love. In fact, they lead to other things. Being able to state when I did for my situation, I'm incompatible doesn't mean I don't love. In fact, the individual and I still consistently communicate. It's just a different type of communication. For those who there is a complete incompatibility of what I am, there is not, because they've chosen to disengage. And this is where respect comes into place. So whenever you've been quote unquote rejected for these traits, I am sharing with you an emotional mental pattern to bring you to neutrality, because it's not one rejection per se. What it is you're not matching the vibe and or mentality, if you will, of another. That's all. There are different ways of doing things. And yes, that is all when you're a functional adult. So there's self-worth. You know you're worthy. and you know you're different and others are different, because every one of us is. None of us are really different. We share common traits, and the one common trait is nobody likes to be hurt. However, again, modality of communication is different amongst people of even the same household. And there will be arguments and heartbreak. This is because there's different ways. There doesn't have to be a right or wrong. When you're an adaptive child, this is where you're thinking of things as right or wrong, emotionally speaking. When you're a functional adult, you acknowledge there are differences and that everyone holds trauma. So that's also part of the equation, but we all have a mindset, a way we think of things, conditions, and those people have presented theirs to you, and you don't match them. Self-worth, you can love who you are as you are and allow yourself to know that not matching somebody else's mindset doesn't mean you are unworthy or that that trait needs to be felt as wrong. But that's where only you can give yourself that type of unconditional love. And then go about knowing that there are people that will unconditionally love you. And probably there already are. They're the ones that might tease you about that trait. But they will know it, and they will not doubt your heart, your love, your connection. I've shared an example with a loved one where we were just talking about insecurities, like when you feel that maybe you're doing something, again, irritating, annoying, because we're concerned with those relationships, right? And I shared with them because they were sharing something, and what I said was, there are times where I've had these types of, and really it's dreams, because my dream state connects to the souls that I'm connected to, and it was involving them and not being loved by them. And what she said was, really? And I said, yeah, I really, like twice or three times I've woken up out of this type of dream, and it's been like, oh, I'm not loved, I'm annoying, I'm like, the traits were me being annoying, so they were feeling me as annoying. And I said I woke up and I disregarded it in two ways, because one, if you are annoyed, you'll tell me sooner or later, and two, if you don't, well, that's on you, not on me. And here's why I'm sharing this. It doesn't mean we don't feel, again, those traits that you don't love about yourself, because usually they've been presented in a way because they're different than what others would do, that's all. But you can be the grown-up of you and be okay with it. And humorously, as well as with all confidence, because here's where, when I said to the person, I'm like, in either cases, I'm not going to make it my mission to find out, because honestly, that's energy I'm not going to do right here. Abundance. Your abundance grows where energy flows. If people want to talk about you, do things behind your back, because this is where we're also leading. So right here, those experiences to bring into the mix, I can't trust anybody, those narratives, everybody's going to break my heart. Right here, another conditioned response with a storyline versus what's actually happening. And when I say actually, I mean with your prefrontal cortex. A person chose to disengage from telling me exactly, in spelling it out, words, and or just saying, hey, I don't want to hang out, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They didn't have the courage. And here's the part. Why? Because we are tendency wanting to be nice to each other. We have an attachment defensive state. We've been taught how to be polite. So courage is a word I'm using, but the reality is it's another area of vulnerability. Humanity likes to label each other as liars, deceivers, betrayers. Most people fall within that category because you're not really sharing your intimate thoughts at all times. It's not a aspect that has to be put in duality. And the adult, the functional adult, the 5D self-empowered person, again, awareness, neutrality, conditions, society, they all play a role. And you're going to get to choose if you want to allow yourself to move beyond, transform these conditions, and allow yourself to recognize, I can be transparent and you choose to be so, and those who you engage with can, and they might or might not. Where are you going to use your energy? And usually the relationships that stay in time, you've chosen. So you're either aware of stuff, and or not. To label one experience and then say, oh, everything else. This is what I'm trying to get at. People stay in this story, this criticism, this environment from one or two or three experiences, which really are unmatches and or the opportunity for you to learn how to be unconditionally loving, because that is what we get to do when we have experiences with each other, especially when it comes to love and heartbreak. Being able to stand up for yourself with those areas that you don't love is something you can achieve with the pure love for yourself, your loved ones, humanity. This is that unbounded, that unconditional love in its purest form. And respecting by understanding that differences don't have to be rejection, but they can be felt, and that you can walk yourself through it. I gave you examples. So now let us look at if there are areas of resentment towards loved ones or any relationship from the past, anything that you can think of or that arises, even in societal cultural norms, sadness, anger. Allow yourself to bring what it is you feel you would want to share in those circumstances. What is it that you're actually wanting to share? Why are you, or is there sadness, resentment, anger? In this case, there's usually an area where, luckily for you, your lovely ego self is saying, I deserve to be respected. I deserve to let me be who I want to be. You can't tell me what to do. That's why we get charged up. So on the contrary of the rejection, which is a low energy, right? It's I'm gonna hide away, I feel unworthy. I'm feeling quote unquote worthy. It's not worthy yet, because that truth, so true self, true worthiness doesn't need to be defended. This is why it's you in your ventral state. It's you as a functional adult who knows you are worthy and that you are different in certain ways than others. We're all different, but the people that are in your life and will grow, you're choosing the ones who unconditionally love you. And when it comes to those moments of insecurities, you're allowing yourself to know you coexist, but you don't have to feel angry or sad when there is quote unquote this rejection. So love, self-love, and love to the external can all happen in one go, and that's the best for you. Anger, resentment, sadness, you're defending you in this case with the anger, resentment, okay? But now that you've identified, I know this is what I'm worth, this also means those situations are not compatible with you. So if there are people that are treating you a certain way, now if there's a hidden message behind your resentment, you'll find that where you've lied to yourself, if you will, about something, and that takes place when, let's say, there's a lack of feeling of worthiness, because this is for the deeper self of an individual who has not a picture of their true self because they've been used to defending their self their entire lifetime. And this is very specific because there's a group of people that do fall within this. And so those individuals, there's a different type of resentment. In this case, it's twofold. It'll involve behavior that is something that once the mind is clear, the mind realizes was unnecessary, uncalled for, and negative, right? And so then there's the realization of what that resentment represents, which is a negating to oneself something that really you did want, or that in some way, shape, or form you were moving away from for other reasons. And that awareness can then bring a sense of guilt and shame. And right here, I want you to share love if this is the case, because what you experience when this is happening is something that you were very young when it began. And I'm stating this for the information that I have from the psychoeducation that I'm gathering at all times, and that defense mechanism that an infant will have in neglectful and abusive households, okay? And so there's a way of self-sabotage that takes place. So this is that resentment from realizing I just sabotaged my own self. I sabotaged something that I wanted. I felt unworthy. I wasn't clear. I got angry, and then I did things I didn't want to do. Okay, all of these can take place, and usually this is where I'm trying to help anyone who's in this place. Don't sit on it. Please embrace yourself, like hug yourself right now. Have compassion. Do know that the psychologists, I have a lot of patients they work with that have these experiences. FYI, you're not alone. And now what I want you to do is make your mind on how can you make up for this? How can you fix, quote unquote? So if it involves person and or people, you can always extend that what is it called, the peace flower, okay? You can trying gets you to have taken action, and that is a way you won't hold against yourself something. You're able to make peace that way. If this is not possible, then what you want to do is make peace with yourself. In this way of understanding, you've identified something very important today, or right now, right? Or maybe you already have for a long time, that you have a tendency to feel less worthy than, and to hide certain things, and to do this pattern, right, of self-sabotage. Identify the components to it, the emotional components. You can tell, you have tells, we all have tells. Get to know yourself. This mechanism, this pattern, helped to defend you in certain ways. So you get to know it and work with what? Now let's choose what you do want, how you want to behave. This is what you need to bring. Now you've chosen what you're going to do instead of the other. First, you identify the pattern of behavior that you understand is self-sabotage. You don't judge the emotion of anger or resentment or sadness, because you understand it comes from a habit of not feeling worthy, of not feeling enough. But it's in the body, so it's stored in more than just the surface. It's a very beautiful journey when you start working with the body, heart, and mind with unconditional love. Anytime there's any feeling that is not in a space of love, it is your opportunity to transform that conditioned response, because your body has a conditioned response. That default network we all have was built by that 10, 12-month self of us, okay? So I'm going to move to that other type of resentment and anger as well, and allow those who are in this place to know that for you in this case, and even the ones in the other field, I'm sure you might have these experiences as well, since we have an array of them. What we want to always be able and take a look at is, okay, I defended me, so there is a knowledge of my worthiness, which means I'm being treated in a way that I know I don't deserve and or want, whether it be the job, the people, right? And with this awareness, give yourself a thumbs up, because you're defending and protecting you and your way. Now, let's get out of resentment and bring love. And FYI, always the lovely psychologist, many people don't like confrontation. They're either avoidant or they're aggressive about it because they have assumptions, but really it's because it's uncomfortable. So now that you know that body element, what I want you to acknowledges you're being treated in a way that you don't agree with. You're in a situation that your body doesn't agree with. You're tired of being in this place. That's the only reason resentment would build, and or anger. Okay, so one, whoever, whatever, is not matching your vibration, where you're wanting to go, what you're wanting to be. It's not matching how you are, the essence of you. Again, pat yourself on the back, because I want you to get out of resentment and anger so that you can calm your mind, because as long as you're in that, you ain't calm enough to really think through with your prefrontal cortex in its highest potential, which will be when you're in a state of compassion. Pat yourself on the back for defending you. Pat yourself again on the back. Smile humbly and know you've just defended you, and you're going to keep doing this. So this is where, how do you do this? It's not by thinking negative thoughts or being mean with the, whatever the situation is. What it is what steps are you going to take? Example, when I had my talk, which wasn't initiated by me because I didn't actually have an issue with the person. They're the ones who had an issue with the communication. With the best loving words, neutral words possible, every time they came at me with their anger, I responded with a truth. Like, okay, this is what you're saying to me, but here's my answer to why. Here's my answer to this. And they kept going with the cheap shots because they were in that state of spitefulness, which comes from a person who is in a space of emotional hurt, by the way. And this is where, as you think of what situation you're wanting to disengage from, take those steps to communicate your message. So if it's a person, you don't need to disclose elements of you're offending me or not, because that leads you to battle. What you want to lead with is what you want. So if it's complete disengagement, then in one way, shape, or form, I am not going to engage with you anymore. The reality is you can naturally disengage by stopping to go out with those friends and just starting to be in I'm busy, or again, whatever it is that feels most comfortable. Now, some people say, well, shouldn't you have a one-to-one conversation? And here's where this is up to the person. But you don't need to hurt people's feelings to get yourself out of situations that are no longer serving your higher potential. Because it's always going to be ego in those cases. And so confrontation in its essence with unconditional love is where you build something. You build a bridge. You can come to a meeting of the minds. If there's not that potential, but there's only hurt as a potential, there are ways that people do go about it to create, again, abundance and love. And so it isn't by saying to somebody what they're not doing for you that's going to bring that, because that's going to make them feel that they're not worthy. And the reality is that's not the case. There's simply a mismatch. This is why if it's a group of people that are not treating you, and I have a situation that I can give as an example, and the individual realized this, they knew it, but they continued to engage in that circle until they found a way out of it, which was by getting into a relationship. You can always proactively choose not to engage in circles of friends. It's the part about being then on your own that may be why you stay in those circumstances. So again, the resentment, the anger is also for those situations, maybe as a child, right? Your environment, things that have taken place. And in this case, those are deeper. So what you want to do beyond this session is to allow yourself to let those emotions be with you as you allow love, your own love, and neutrality to take place of the narratives. So instead of putting in a why anything, you just allow yourself to know that this is emotionally important to me. I am still experiencing this emotion. You don't think about the event. You allow yourself to say, I'm bringing love. I want peace. You choose the emotion and mental pattern that you want to now establish with that. This is why it requires your wanting to transform and become independent from that conditioned response, because it is your response. It's not good or bad. It has a reason for being there. You were defending you are defending you, right? Or the situation, it was a crappy situation. No other way to put it. But you can work with the emotional response, and you can do that every time it arises. That's your opportunity. So when there is an absence of love, that is always your opportunity to actually bring in love consistently. Those who do not, well, they're not the ones who are doing this universal love energy transmission session. Allow yourself to, if you want, before we go, make a list of emotional experiences that made you sad about love, with relationships, with loved ones. Maybe even write down or decide, what is pure love? How does it feel to me? So again, it's unbounded, unconditional. Catch yourself giving conditions. Unconditional is that, and I'm going to give it the example. You contribute to nothing at all, okay? And in your heart of hearts, you feel worthy. This means in your heart of hearts, you acknowledge, I deserve. It's not the word deserve, though. It's a feeling. It's more of, I exist. I'm alive. Whether people like me or don't like me, I live. Why should I not want to live? To actually feel, wow, how could I even ever think of that I should not live? So it's not about life. It's actual self-worth. I'm trying to describe the feeling of I exist, and it doesn't matter who likes me or doesn't. I'm alive. A feeling of neutrality, which acknowledges your existence with neutrality, and that same neutrality is extended to the external, because you can understand that our lovely species has gone through an evolution. We have not always been conscious with intellect. We have still so much way to go when there are people that actually talk about love, unconditional, and are not in any way, shape, or form. And that still only use this word love only in their relationships. Again, we're in the 21st centuries. I've encountered people and had experiences that are of a medieval time. These same individuals do not consider themselves medieval. They, in fact, consider themselves quite quote unquote, as Sadhguru puts it, civilized. This idea of civilized, I forget what it was he said, but he said, the people talk about civilization when what they're doing is now not civilized in any way, shape, or form. Talk to any guru, they will talk to you about what unconditional love is, and it doesn't have conditions. It doesn't say and cast stones on people and treat people in certain ways, which is in fact what these individuals, who again, societally speaking, because we all know cultural norms, with all neutrality I speak these words and share them with you, and hope that with this session you can feel the neutrality within your own body. Because, side note, whenever those moments have taken place, personally I did not get angry, I did not have resentment, I did have sadness, and I did have heartbreak, but not because I was a bad person, simply because it was hurtful. The absence of love is also love. So sadness to me has never been a bad or good thing. It's actually a representation of the love we can hold and always do hold. Even though now I can know it's our mammalian heritage. Being able to feel that you are worthy, I have to use that word, but it's really being able to acknowledge that you exist. And to, in pure love, allow yourself to embrace our lovely imperfections. Being yourself with those very places that you think are not good places. Again, if they are hurtful to others, you want to disengage from them, and you can. If they're simply quirks, Nobody's perfect. We all have them. So learn to love them and find those people who will laugh about them with you. As you keep growing, my lovely community, those of you who tune in regularly, that self-empowerment keeps building and building. And for those who may never come back to any episodes, I hope that definitely this one allows you to move forward with all unconditional love for yourself and humanity. Always. Well, it usually goes both ways. The part when it's self, it's others, because we are one. So you can only unconditionally love yourself if you actually also extend that to our lovely human species and all life form. I have now disconnected from you, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes, or not minutes, more like seconds. Take lovely breaths, smile a bit, and I really hope you guys have a lovely love day, even though let's make every day a love day, because not to mention that the episode will be live as long as the digital sphere will keep it online. So this Valentine's Day to me is special as is any other day. I do love that there are people that celebrate it even more, and with this transmission session, I hope that we can make it again unconditional and a constant